Hopefully you've already watched the different components of an essay video. So hopefully you have. If you haven't, it's okay. But in this video, we're going to talk about one of the first components that have to go in every single essay. And this component is probably the most important thing that you can have in a paper, and that is your introduction. And it's usually either introductions or conclusions that scare people. And it's usually either one or the other that you're really good at, and then you suck at the other one. So for some of you, you might be really good at writing introductions, but you suck at conclusions. Or you might be good at conclusions, but you hate doing introductions. We're going to spend a little bit more time together talking about introductions than we are any other component of the paper, only because it is so important, because it's the very first thing that the reader sees. So imagine when you see somebody for the very first time and you get an impression of them, and you decide whether you want to walk up to them and talk to them or whether you don't, whether you want to continue a conversation or you don't. Because that's kind of a first impression and a way in. And that's why introductions, one of the reasons introductions are so important. So that's what we're going to be talking about in this video. So there are a couple jobs that an introduction does. What are they? You can put me on pause and talk about it. If you're in a classroom, if you're home, you can talk to yourself and hope nobody hears you, that's fine. But there are a couple things that introductions do. So one of the first things that it does is introduce your topic. The reader is able to get an idea of what you're going to be writing about and what they're going to be spending their time reading about. Another thing that introductions do is ease the reader into the topic. So when you ease a reader into a topic, you just slowly get them acclimated to what you're going to be talking about. So you don't want to bombard them, or they're going to feel overwhelmed really, really quickly. So your introduction is a way to ease yourself into your topic, and a way to ease your reader into your topic. Usually introductions are a little bit more broad. We're going to talk about two different strategies for actually writing an introduction that you can do along with me. The other thing that an introduction does is let the reader know the exact topic or focus of the paper. And the last thing that the introduction does is it lets the reader know what kind of paper they're going to be reading. So these are the four jobs that an introduction does. So it's a lot more important than some people might think. If you don't have an introduction, you don't have a paper, to be quite honest. You're not allowed to ever not have an introduction. Whether you're writing an MLA format, whether you're in APA format, whether you're writing a brochure, everything has some kind of introduction to it. So do me a favor, and please close your eyes, and I want you to imagine something for me. Please don't fall asleep. But just close your eyes and let your brain drift a little bit. And I want you to imagine that it is a 90-degree day outside, and it's like Memorial Day, early May or mid-May kind of a time, and you're not expecting it to be so hot, and it's that sticky, humid kind of heat, where your clothes are sticking to you and you're sweating like a pig and no amount of deodorant can help, and you have swamp butt in your shorts and you feel disgusting and it is so gross outside. So you go over your friend's house who has just opened their pool, but the water is still ice cold, and you're standing next to this above ground pool looking into the water, and it looks like heaven. It looks like your relief. And you stick your finger in the water and it is really, really, really cold. So if your finger is that cold, you know the rest of your body is not going to want to go in it. So your friend's 12-year-old obnoxious brother comes up behind you, picks you up and throws you in the water in the above ground pool, and you burst out of the middle of the pool in the water going, I'm gonna kill you, and you start yelling at him and all that stuff. And your body is tingling because it's so cold. You feel like you've just gotten kicked in the lungs, and it takes you a while to adjust to what's going on because your body has been so jarred by the experience. Everybody thinking? You can open your eyes if you haven't already. What I just described to you is what that feeling of bursting out of the water and your body being all jarred and traumatized to an extent. That's what your reader feels when there's no introduction. It's like you have just punched them in the face all of a sudden with randomness. So close your eyes again, please. Don't fall asleep. Now I want you to picture that same situation. You're at the side of the pool, you're sticking your finger in the water, and the water is really cold, but you and your friend decide you're going in anyway, and there is no 12-year-old obnoxious brother this time. So your friend gets in first, and your friend is one of those people who climbs up one side of the ladder, gets on the first rung on the inside part of the ladder, and dives right in, and whew, that's refreshing, kind of a thing. And you're standing at the top of the ladder looking at your friend like, seriously, how did you just do that? So your friend is in the pool and you turn around at the top of the ladder and you're holding on for dear life looking down at the water, and you do one of those like tightrope walker things. And you're standing there and you just dip a toe in the water and oh my God, it's cold. You pull it right back out. You dip your toe in the water again and you get all 5 toes in. And you get up to your ankle. Wow, you're down one step. You feel very victorious right now. Don't you splash me, I'll kill you. Don't you dare splash me. And then now you're up to your shins. And it takes you about 20 minutes to get down the ladder until you're finally in the pool up to about here, and you're doing one of these on your tippy toes. Because your feet being flat or being on your tippy toes makes a big difference. But you're doing one of the on the tippy toes, arms still above the water. Don't splash me! I can't get soaked! And your friend is swimming around and making fun of you. And then you do one of the... and you finally get up to about here and swear you're going to get it. Now, we're like a half hour into this now. Okay, I'm going to go under. I swear, I'm going to go... Oh, I got my hair wet. My father is so that person. It takes him forever to get in the pool. I'm the friend who dives in. But easing into the pool water, what that person is doing is allowing their body to adjust to the changes little by little by little. That is what your introduction does for a reader. Your introduction, just like that person used those steps on the ladder and things like that to ease into that water and ease into that new territory and that change and that shocking stuff. Your introduction works to ease your reader into your topic and into your information. So just like you want to kill the 12-year-old obnoxious brother after you get thrown in the pool, to an extent, that's the same thing that your reader wants to do to you if you just throw information at them and you don't ease them into what is about to happen. So that's one of the reasons why introductions are so unbelievably important. Now there's one thing in the introduction that usually scares the bejesus out of people. And that's the thing that lets the reader know the exact focus of the paper. So maybe you're talking about dogs. Well, you need something to let the reader know exactly what about the dogs you're going to be talking about. And then you need something to let the reader know whether it's going to be an informative paper, a persuasive paper, a process paper, stuff like that. And that thing is called the dreaded thesis statement. I think I just heard you shudder. How many of you hate thesis statements? Yeah, I know. They're freaky. I really don't know why, but they come with such a bad stigma. I remember when I was in, junior high and high school and stuff like that, and it was like people made thesis statements out to be so hard. And students have a tendency to overthink them, to stress about them, to freak out about them, and there's really no need to. So let's walk you through a thesis statement. So I'm going to erase this stuff so I have some writing room. But these are the two big jobs that a thesis statement does. Every single paper. Every single paper. Every paper. Did you hear that? I said it 3 times. Little important. Remember that. Every paper needs to have a thesis statement. Anybody know how long it is? Hopefully, you said 1 sentence. It is always a declarative sentence. So I just threw some English word at you. So there are different kinds of sentences. The interrogatory sentence is the one that ends with a question mark because it's a question. The imperative is when you're telling somebody to do something or you're giving a command. Exclamatory sentences are ones that ends in exclamation points. So declarative sentences are the ones where you're just saying something and they end in a period. That's what you're going for. So your thesis, basically what I want you to take out of that is your thesis statement can never end, can never be a command, it can never be a question, and it can never be something with an exclamation point at the end of it. So it always just has to be a plain old simple sentence. Jane ran up the hill. I'm not telling Jane to run up the hill. I didn't ask her if she ran up the hill. And I'm not being a cheerleader that she ran up the hill. With an exclamation point. So you just want to keep them declarative sentences. For our purposes for now, it's always going to go at the end of your introduction. And it has to be the last sentence. And I said for our purposes now, because when we get to English 2 and we're talking in APA style, that's going to switch just a little bit. But in MLA style, your thesis statement is always the very last sentence of your introduction. And it's 1 sentence long. So this lets your reader know what your paper is going to be about specifically and what style of paper it's going to be. So if you look at your syllabus, there are going to be 5 different essays that you guys are going to be writing. And I'm going to erase again, so put me on pause just in case. I'm going to write 5 different sentences up here that are all going to be about the same topic. And I probably should have prepared this before I hit record, but I didn't, so I'm going to be doing this off the top of my head. But even though all of these sentences are going to be about the same topic, you're going to see that they all kind of shift in nature a little bit. So wait until I write all of these sentences for you to copy them, especially because I'm doing this off the top of my head. I have a tendency to not like the sentence and erase it, so I'll let you know when it's safe to write. So here's number 1. Okay, so this one is okay for you to write. I'm done with that one. I hope this marker is showing up for you. Please leave room next to these sentences, because what we're going to do after I'm done writing them is label what each kind is, just so you know where I'm going with this. So number 2 is okay to write down if you can see it. So the first one says, making shoes is a beneficial and cost-effective process to know. And number 2, sorry I'm sniffling so much, my allergies are driving me nuts. Sentence number 2 says, wedges are the most comfortable type of shoe. Oops. Okay, sentence number 3 is good to go. I'm going to change out markers. I hope this one's darker. So number 3 says, while platforms and espadrilles both offer their wearer height, their level of comfort can differ. Wait, don't write this one. Now you can start writing this one. If any of you watching this know me well, is it a surprise that I'm choosing shoes for this topic? So number 4 is good to write. The invention of shoes for protection and comfort has led to a significant change in fashion for years. Don't write this one yet. I don't know where I want it to go yet. I do, but I don't. I don't know what that means at all. Hopefully you're still jotting down the other ones and I'm not really wasting your time at the moment. Okay, you can write this last one. So the last one says, there are numerous types of shoes for each gender. So we are going to do 5 different essays in this class overall, and we have 5 thesis statements up here. Each one of these is a thesis statement. It is 1 sentence long. It lets the reader know what the paper would be about or what kind of information they would find in the paper. And it is indicative, or it lets the reader know what kind of paper they're going to be writing. So if you have your syllabus, please flip to the description of the essays that you're going to do. There's 4 of them on it. I don't have the persuasive on it. But usually the persuasive I don't have to really explain. So the informative, the causality, the compare contrast, the process, and the persuasive. Those are your 5 choices for what's up here. So let's start with number 1. Making shoes is a beneficial and cost-effective process to know. So based on the 5 essays that we're going to be doing in this mod, which type of paper do you think that thesis statement would go with? Take a minute, talk about it. You only have 5 options, so if you get it wrong, it's really no big deal. It'll be process of elimination soon. Hopefully, you said process. This is an example of a process essay, thesis statement. Because in the paper, we're probably going to be reading about the process of making shoes. Step 1, get leather. I don't know. Step 2, get a pattern. If I knew how to make shoes, I would save a lot of money, trust me. Let's flip down to number 5. There are numerous types of shoes for each gender. So of what's left, informative, persuasive, causality, compare, contrast, what do you think you would be reading about in that kind of paper? And I'm sure one of you said numerous types of shoes for each gender. If you did, you're pretty much right. So what would I be doing in this paper then? Which kind of paper would this be of the 4 that are left? I can't hear you, so this makes this really weird, but I'm hoping you said informative, because I would be informing the reader of the different types of shoes. Let's do number 2. Wedges are the most comfortable type of shoe. Is anybody sitting there going, no they're not, flats are. No they're not, sneakers are. No they're not, platform peep toes are. No they're not, espadrilles are. You're getting the point? If you're able to go, no they're not, blank is instead, then what kind of paper is this? And usually this is the one you guys get the fastest. This one is persuasive, because I'm trying to convince you that wedges are the most comfortable type of shoe. So there are 2 left. There are compare, contrast, and causality. So causality shows causes and effects, and compare, contrast shows similarities and differences. So let's look at sentences 3 and 4. While platforms and espadrilles both offer their wearer height, their level of comfort can differ. So is sentence number 3 showing how they're similar and how they're different? Or is it showing how they were created and what has happened afterwards? Hopefully, you said compare, contrast, because this is showing how they're the same, but how they're different. So in this paper, I'm going to be showing the reader how they can both be to a height advantage. They can lift you up height-wise, but sometimes they're really not as comfortable as others are. And I'm writing comfort instead of compare. So this was a compare contrast. So by process of elimination, we can figure out what sentence number 4 is. The invention of shoes for protection and comfort has led to a significant change in fashion for years. So this is cause and effect, or causality in English land. This is the cause of why they were created, protection and comfort. And this is the result, or the effects, a significant change in fashion. So this is a causality. I really hope that you've written these down, and I really hope that you've labeled them, because like I said a few minutes ago, every single paper, absolutely 1 bazillion% needs to have a thesis statement. So when you get to every single kind of paper we're going to do, you already have samples of what the thesis statements look like. So I'm about to erase the board, so if you haven't written these down yet, you would better put me on pause so that you can. There are 2 ways to write introductions, and that's going to be what we talk about next. And we're not quite almost done yet, just so you know. Hang in there, there's still a little bit to go. But I like to spend the most time on introductions because they are the most important, because they get your reader in and they get them interested, and because usually introductions and thesis statements are what give readers, or give writers the most agita, to an extent. So, there are 2 methods for writing introductions. And one, you may have seen this before. A lot of the times this style is taught in high school and things like that. And it revolves around a shape. And here's your shape. What is it? Probably one of you or some of you have said an upside down triangle. So if you have, now we need to replace the words upside down and triangle with different words. And then you'll have the name of what this thing is called. This is called the inverted pyramid. You might like this, you might not. If you like it, use it, that's wonderful. If you don't like it, you don't ever have to use it. I just want to give you the tools so that you could have it if you need it or if you want to try it. So the way that an inverted pyramid works is that you write your introduction based on the shape of this thing. So looking at its shape, what do you think that would mean for the introduction? How do you think that you would write it? Hopefully you're saying from general or broad to specific, because that's how you work this thing. So you start broad or general, and then you end specific. And what is the most specific element of your introduction that tells your reader what kind of paper it's going to be and what you're specifically going to focus on? What does that? Please say thesis statement. So your thesis statement is going to be the very end of your pyramid. The idea behind drawing one of these is that you kind of make framework for your introduction. This is going to be really gross and really ugly at first, but that's okay. That's how it's supposed to be. There are two ways to work this pyramid. You could work it from the top down, or you could work it from the bottom up. I'm going to show you both. Sometimes when I explain working the pyramid from the bottom up, it confuses people, and that, please, it's not my intention at all, is to confuse you. I like to show you from the bottom up because even for me personally, I was never able to wrap my head around using it from top to bottom. For me personally, it only makes sense working from the bottom up. So that's why I just want to show you both, because I was never shown both. I didn't realize until I got older and I would write a lot more, you could use it the opposite way too. So the idea behind this is that you take a really broad topic. Dogs, I don't know. And then as you move down the pyramid, you make this more specific and more specific. So, big dogs. Working dogs. German Shepherds. Down to my thesis, I'm going to make it informative. German Shepherds are often used as police dogs. So now, what you would do is you would write one sentence for each of these levels. And this is where it gets gross. And it's going to look stupid and bad, and that's okay, it's going to. So just know that it's not you, that's how it's supposed to look. So, a sentence about dogs. If you're in the classroom, as a group, make a sentence about dogs. There are many dogs. Dogs are fun. Dogs are nice. Whatever. Make one simple sentence about dogs. There are many kinds of dogs. Now we need a sentence about big dogs. Think of one. Many are big dogs. I am not making difficult sentences here, neither should you. Then we need a sentence about working dogs. People use dogs for work. Like farming or something like that, if you want to add to it. Now we need a sentence about German Shepherds. German Shepherds are big dogs. And then the last sentence is our thesis statement. German Shepherds are often used as police dogs. So this would be an informative paper. But I started broad, so even though these sentences together look really bad, and you're probably making faces at the board going, seriously, she's telling me to do this? That's okay. It's going to start ugly, but even though it looks really bad and it looks really ugly, the truth of the matter is you have an introduction. It's not a good one, but you have one, and you didn't have one before you tried this. So you've already gained something. You're already a step ahead. So the next step of this would be to take these random 5 sentences, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, take these random 5 sentences and start to rework them and gel them together and make them fit. And then keep this one as your last sentence. When you do that, you have an introduction. So that's how to use the pyramid. Some people don't like how I was talking about. I never used to be able to wrap my own personal brain around how to work from the top to the bottom. because I never knew where I was going to end up, and I didn't like that. So, you could use the pyramid, but work from the bottom up. A lot of the times, after you pick a topic, you already know what your thesis statement is going to be because you already know what kind of paper you have to write, and you already know what you want to focus on. So a lot of the times, you could write your thesis statement first, and then make it a step broader or bigger, and then make that a step bigger, and make that a step bigger, and that a step bigger, and then do the same exact thing and write the sentences for each level that you made. And there's no set amount of levels in this pyramid. You could have 3 steps, you could have 8 steps, whatever. I usually hang around 4 or 5. 4 and then my thesis statement, because that'll make it long enough for you. So that's how you can work it from the bottom up or from the top down. Like I said, if you're someone who already knows where you're going with the paper, you know the focus, you know what kind of paper you're doing, it might work better for you to start by writing your thesis statement and then making that step a little bit bigger, and then that a little bit more broad, and then that a little bit more broad. And that's how to do that. So that's one style of introduction. There's one more style, and it's not going to take nearly as long to explain as the inverted pyramid did. And this thing is called the narrative style. Anybody know what a narrative means? And if you're answering, good for you. It's not like I can hear you anyway. A narrative, and you've probably heard this in English class a lot, but basically a narrative is a story. So sometimes one way that you can write an introduction is to tell a story about whatever your topic is. When you do this, you still go broad to specific. And you still end with a factual thesis statement. And you can completely make up whatever, you can make up the characters, the circumstances, whatever. And it still has to be in third person. But there are a lot of people who really like this style of introduction. It gives the writer a little bit of creativity, especially since we're not doing creative writing, so many of you sometimes have that creative urge, and this storytelling kind of a thing really works well. Another thing that's really nice about the narrative introduction is you can, whatever example you start with in your introduction, you can weave it through the rest of your paper and bring it up again in your conclusion and kind of show that link between two things. So here's an example. I'm going to use this same exact thing, but I'm going to do it as a narrative, and I'm just going to say it. So if you want to write it down, which would be great, after I say it, just rewind me and play it again. So my thesis statement is German Shepherds are often used as police dogs. Okay, off the top of my head. Usually when people see Kobe coming, they turn and walk away quickly. His deep bark scares people, but after they get to know him, they really love him. Kobe spends his days hanging out with Sergeant Loss, I don't know. Every day he spends his day fighting crime just like his partner does. German Shepherds are often used as police dogs. Granted, that wasn't a very good narrative and off the top of my head, but it was short, it was concise, and I still ended with the same exact thesis statement I would have with a factual kind of introduction. Now, there are some pitfalls to using a narrative introduction. The first one being it's way too long and way too detailed. So please write that down also. These are some pitfalls of using a narrative introduction. You get too big. Some writers who don't know how to execute this properly get too invested in the story and spend too much time in the story rather than trying to make their point. So, pitfalls: too long, too involved in the story, too detailed, you forget to make your point. So those are some of the biggest issues with these narratives. I had one student who kept trying to do these factual introductions and kept getting stuck, and his papers really weren't very good, to be quite honest. But I had seen different glimmers of hope in him in different sentences he had written and things like that. So I recommended he try this, and he did. And after he finished, the paper spewed out of his fingers like fire. He was on such a hot streak. He didn't feel that resistance of, I don't know where I'm going next. And his paper ended up absolutely beautiful and exquisite. Granted, he still made mistakes and things like that, but that was his style. He wrote every single one of his papers for me with that narrative introduction, and it was his style, and that's what worked for him. And anytime he tried doing an inverted pyramid, factual kind of introduction, he would get stuck. So for some people, this really, really works. For some people, they try it, and the effort is great, but the execution really isn't good because of those 4 pitfalls to look out for. So try it. Give it a shot. You never know. It might fit you really well. Just be cautious of those 4 things that can make it go pretty bad. So here's the last thing that we're going to talk about with introductions. I like to give you a do not list. There are so many recommendations of things that you should do that sometimes I find it helpful to have a list of things that you should not do as kind of a checklist so you can double check yourself before you turn something in. So that's what we're going to do right now, is a do not list. So in your introductions, you are not allowed to do this stuff. So the first thing you are not allowed to do is announce your intentions. You are never allowed to do this in your thesis statement. You are never allowed to do this anywhere in your paper, essentially, but especially your introduction. You never want to write for your reader, in this paper, I am going to talk about dogs. I will talk about big dogs. I will tell you that German Shepherds are often used as police dogs. You sound like a little kid. That's what you do in elementary writing, and that's what you do when you're first starting out. And a lot of the times I spend this English class debunking whatever, but I was taught to do this, but I was taught, yeah, you were. Just like, remember, if you've watched the video about audience, remember I said that I would teach this class differently to like 4th or 5th graders? At 4th or 5th grade, I would be teaching people to do that because they've never done this before and they need a way in. Well, you're better than that, so your writing needs to get better than that. So I'm going to spend a lot of time teaching you ways to make your writing grow up. We're going to take the training wheels off a lot, and we're going to change some of the things that you've learned because we're going to make the writing better. If you keep writing it the same way you did in 4th grade, you're going to sound like you're in 4th grade. So you are not allowed to do that. The second thing you are not allowed to do is apologize. And this is usually the one where students go, what the heck are you talking about? I often have students, when they don't know how to write an introduction, I often have students apologize that they don't know how to write one. or they apologize to the reader for the things that they're not going to talk about. You don't want to do that. You don't need to do that. You just want to focus on the stuff that you are able to do. Because remember, if you watched the audience video already, you don't want to give your audience any reason to doubt you or question you at all. If you haven't watched it yet, you'll see it again. So you cannot apologize for the stuff that you don't know. Just build on the stuff that you do. Please do not use definitions. In your introduction. So often I get the first line of an introduction. Webster often defines love as a connection between people. I don't care. If I wanted to know the definition of love, I'd go look it up in the dictionary. But I don't. I want to read your paper. So are you so crappy of a writer that you need to depend on somebody else's definition to start your paper? That is not original. That's my blunt explanation of that one. Usually you guys write dictionary definitions at the beginning of an introduction because you can't figure out how to start the introduction any other way. When you do this, your reader can see right through it. So it might have been a good technique, like I said, if I was teaching this in 5th grade, 6th grade, I would tell students to do this. Because at that point, it's a way in, and that's what they can handle. At this stage of the game, you guys are better than that. So, you are also not using quotes by famous people. For the same exact reasons, you're not using definitions. So, Gandhi described love as da-da-da-da-da-da. Who cares? If I wanted to know, I'd go read Gandhi's stuff, but I don't. I want to read yours, so give me something original. That's my blunt explanation on it. You are not using citations. For the first 4 essays, this won't be an issue because you're not doing anything that requires research. But when you get to a research paper where you actually have to look things up and things like that, you don't get to put citations in the introduction. The introduction and the conclusion are the 2 places in any paper where it's just you talking. There's no new information, there aren't a ton of facts, it's just you talking. So that leads me into number 6. Do not bombard the reader with heavy facts. If you make your introduction really heavy with facts and jargon explanations and concepts and stuff like that, even though you have an introduction there, the information in it is so heavy, it has the same effect as throwing that person in the pool in the ice cold water like we talked about earlier. So you don't want to do that. This is a very technical term. But you don't want to dilly-dally, or BS, depending on how you want to look at it. A lot of the times when students can't figure out how to write an introduction or a conclusion, they figure if they make it longer and they blab a whole lot more, it'll make it look a lot better. Nope. All it does is make it look like you can't make your writing more concise, you can't make your writing more focused, and you really have no idea where this is going. So you BS through it. So make your writing concise. Don't waste time. Say what you need to say. Did that song just pop in anybody's head? 4 sentences, 5 sentences. I purposely have not said how long or how many sentences an introduction should be, because if you are the kind of student who counts sentences, oh, I have 3 sentences, that means I have a paragraph. I need to break you of that. Because you need to use paragraphs when you change ideas, not necessarily just count sentences. So you really don't want to waste a lot of time. You don't want to have an introduction that's way too long or way too heavy at all. Do not be cheesy. Please do not be cheesy. Do not try and tell jokes or anything like that. I'm going to write 9 and 10 together. And I'm sure I'm going to get people mad on this one because I've just stolen your thunder. We're going to talk about number 10 first. You are not allowed to ask questions in your introduction at all, anywhere. You are not allowed to ask questions anywhere in your entire paper. How come? Think of some answers for me, because there are a couple. Obviously, because I'm not here with you, I can't feed off whatever answers you're throwing out there. But there are a couple reasons why you're not asking questions. The first one is, what if you get the answer you don't want? A lot of times writers ask questions, and they ask what are called rhetorical questions, where it's the question that prompts the response. So I had a student once, she was doing a process essay on how to write, or how to make a pizza roll-up thing. I don't know, it sounded good. And her introduction said, "Who doesn't love pizza?" That was the first sentence of her introduction. And I looked at her and I said, well, I don't. The cheese gives me gas, and it makes me fart, and it gives me the craps. And the sauce never tastes right, and I'm allergic to tomatoes, so the sauce on the pizza will make me die, so I don't want to eat it and be farting and full of gas and dying at the same time. And she just looked at me. She was expecting me to say, oh my god, yeah, who doesn't love pizza? Everybody loves pizza. So I'm going to play devil's advocate on you if you ever write a question in anything, and that's the kind of answer I'm going to give you. Because just because you think you might be getting a particular answer doesn't mean that you're going to get that answer from everybody. So if that's the first line of her paper, who doesn't love pizza? If I can go, I don't, does that mean I don't have to read the rest of her paper? Because I guess I'm not going to be interested in the rest of her paper because I don't like pizza. So you don't want to do that to your reader. So now we're going to back up to number 9. And number 9 says that you are not allowed to answer unasked questions. Oh, wait. I'm going to back up to number 10 a minute. Sorry. So one of the reasons that you don't want to ask questions is because you don't want to get a bad answer. But another reason you don't want to ask questions is because I can't answer you. It's a piece of paper. Do you want me to talk back to the piece of paper and answer the question that way? It's not a conversation, so why are you going to ask me something I can't answer? And it's your job to answer the questions, not ask me stuff. It's not a quiz, it's not a test. You're not eliciting prior knowledge or anything a teacher is supposed to do. So why are you asking me? Just tell me. That's your job. So often, I get students who write, yes, comma, shoes are really important. That's what number 9 is talking about. Who asked, what are you answering? Who asked you a question? You can't just write yes, comma, da-da-da-da-da. Or no, comma, smoking is not good for you. Who asked you if it was for you to be able to write yes or no? So you cannot put those things in your introduction at all. Those are crutches. Those, at this stage of the game, at this stage of your writing, those things show that you don't necessarily know how to be better. They make you look more unprofessional than you are. They make you look younger and less able than you actually are. That's what those things do for your writing. You are not allowed to exclude a thesis statement. So every single introduction has to have a thesis statement. Big time. How you feeling? Doing okay? I know this was a long one, and I know that I'm telling you not to bombard your reader with a lot of heavy facts, but I just bombarded you with a lot of heavy stuff. Again, I don't expect you to be able to execute this perfectly on the very first introduction that you write, but we're going to have you practice it a lot, and the more that you practice it, the better that you're going to get. But after you finish, and use one of those two techniques, use the inverted pyramid or use the narrative style, see if one of them works for you, give it a shot, what the heck, what do you have to lose? But use this list just to make sure that you didn't do any of these things. So if you are in the classroom together, I want you to put me on pause for a minute and kind of talk about what of these things you guys have done before and the reality behind why you actually use these techniques. I hope that this has helped. I'm sure I will find out if it has in your writing or not. But good luck!